Hello. How's it going?
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm so good. Thank you
Good.
for joining us. Like, are you on vacation? You're not even in Canada right now.
No, I actually live in London in the UK.
Oh,
I'm
that's
from
mad. How long have
Canada.
you lived there for?
Mm, I came actually in the middle of the pandemic because I had moved to the US before that. I was living in the US, and during pandemic times, I was like, do I go back to Canada or do I go somewhere outside of the US? And
That's
so, yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, and I'm actually heading back to New York on Saturday. I'm going to be there for 2 weeks doing the marathon and a show, and then going up to Calgary and I have a show in Calgary, and then up north to where I'm from.
Right.
So,
Like marathon. Like you're gonna run a marathon?
yeah.
What? They're like 40K,
I
aren't they?
do a lot. I do a lot of running. I don't know how. I'm still one of those people that don't consider myself a runner. Like I do these huge runs and then I'm like, what am I doing?
What you like eat 5 and 10Ks like no problem.
No, I don't think so. I do runs, but I still struggle the whole time. Like when
Oh.
people are like, I just got runner's high, I do this effortlessly, I don't feel like that. I feel all the effort.
All right, so we're man. Now I'm not even sure where I want to start with you because I was like, "Are you on vacation? If so, like, thank you for doing this." But you're actually living there, so you kind of know, like, what's their scene like over there then for music scene.
So I feel in a way that I'm still getting used to it again because I think during the pandemic, during COVID times, everything got shut down. And from what I can tell, and I hear this is the same in Canada, in everywhere, that it's like the whole scene kind of reemerges differently everywhere. So there's a lot of places here that people would say like, go check this out, go meet these people, all these things, and those people have moved outside of London. Those places have shut, all of
Shut
that.
down, sure, yeah.
Yeah, but I find I found making music in New York kind of challenging because I found like especially if you did pop music, most of the people I knew were out in LA, and that kind of was where the scene was like all out there. And here I find that there's a lot of people, they like have their own kind of like sound and music scene going on. So you're able to like meet people that are, yeah, creating their own thing rather than trying to like fit in with like a certain style of music, I find.
That's cool. So you're playing shows there too, then, right?
I had a show a month and a half ago here. I've been doing single release shows. So as I release a song, because I've been getting gearing up to like release all the songs on the album.
Yeah,
So when I release a song, I've been doing a bunch of shows around it. So that's the same thing. I'm gonna play a show as well in New York in 2 weeks, and then do another single release show in Canada, in Calgary. Um, yeah. So.
that's so rad. And so you just released "Sick Rich Girl," and you worked with a
Mhm.
couple like monsters on that track. I'm looking at them like
Try to.
buddies, like they're talking like Grammy guys and like
You know
certified.
what's
Like,
crazy? Like when you read through these things, it sounds so impressive and it is, but like I guess because I've worked with these people as well for what 10 years now.
yeah,
Like we met in college and we're just putting out stuff since then. So it's
they're
actually
just your
so funny
team at
like
this point. Like,
yeah, but like I see certain friends getting awards or getting Grammys or getting these things, and in our head, like what we have, like, oh, you're gonna walk on stage and claim your award, it's gonna be this huge thing. It is obviously huge and so impressive, but it's so funny that like it kind of slides in there,
yeah,
and you're just like, it's not till I'm reading sometimes, even my own things, I'm reading through it, and I'm like, oh, that is really cool and impressive.
it is cool, right? Like little milestones along the
Yeah.
way. Like, I do eventually want to ask you about career highlight. I guess now I'll ask you about it. Like, can you pick one thing that's a career highlight? One thing.
One thing would be Build a Ship, my song, Build a Ship, getting played like all over CBC and Canadian radio. And it was like, the highlight that was cool about it was that, first of all, I wasn't even in Canada at the time because I had just moved over here to London.
Oh, crazy.
But it had got picked up by CBC radio, was getting played on like all the morning shows, all over radio. which was really cool. But I think what was the highlight was like one morning I woke up and my sister sent me this video from inside her car, and she was like, I was just driving to work and I thought, how cool would it be? And she lives in Calgary, in the cold, in the snow, and she was like, I was driving to work and thought, cool would it be that like one day I'll turn on the radio and hear one of Elena's songs. So she's like, I never really listened to the radio, but I just turned the radio on, and she's like, your song was playing.
Oh,
And
that's
so
great.
she was like, I had to pull over and take a video about it. And I was like, that is sick. That's cool.
That's so cool. Can you remember the first time you heard your stuff on radio?
Funny enough, it wasn't radio. It was like, I think in New York, 'cause in New York I always worked random jobs while I was doing music stuff. And I was working in this like random mall, and the people who like curated the music there, I think they realized I did music and had put some of I don't know if they were playing like Spotify radio channels or what kind of stuff they were doing,
Yeah.
but they put my music on without me knowing it. And I remember one day I'm at work and it's so busy and I'm like talking with a bunch of customers. And I keep thinking like the song sounds so familiar. Like there's just something, the song sounds so familiar. But I'm like distracted, kind of talking with people. And then I was like, who is this? And I was like, my first thought was, is this Halsey? Is this Billie Eilish? And I was like naming a bunch of art, like who do I listen to? And what is this song? And then suddenly I had this realization that it was me and it was like one of my songs. And I was
What a
like,
trip.
that was such a, yeah, that was like a, what has happened? Yeah.
That's
So
cool. And like, when did you start taking music serious? How old were you?
I have played music my whole life. So like since I was like 6 was doing piano and
Oh,
was really always like really intense into it. Like did classical piano, would study a ton, competed, wrote on piano. And I started songwriting around the age of like 10.
no
And I would just kind of keep it to myself though. Yeah, like I just like would always like fill up journals, everything. And I think is how like I got through a lot of my childhood and processed things.
Hmm.
Um, and once again though, like I didn't have like any, it felt like I didn't have any opportunities, if that makes sense, in terms of somebody listening to my songs and saying like, this is really good, let's advance it. Like I just kept my songs to myself. I don't think anybody knew that I wrote songs.
Like, why did you
I
think
never
that?
really.
Because you were just small town BC? Like, what?
No, because I think I thought my voice wasn't good, but also I think, yeah, the music style around there was all like folk music, maybe country music, but like whenever you went to see people perform, or it was like classical or choirs or church music. So I didn't really see anyone else doing that thing. You'd only hear it on like the top 40 radio, but you'd never go see a concert of somebody like playing pop music or things like that. It was all, or it was like classical music, folk music, chamber music, I don't know, like everything but. Um, so I think I just didn't see it around me and didn't know like,
Right.
yeah, how to move forward with it. So I kind of kept it to myself. And then when I was 18, moved to Calgary and was there for like 8 months or so. And I think then is when I started like putting out YouTube covers of my stuff and releasing some of my own songs. And finally got into Berkeley, and I was like, let me just pitch myself as a songwriter for other artists because they know they have like a lot of singers there who need songs. So I went into it with the idea of like, oh, I'll write songs for other people. And I think that was like this big opening. Like I arrived there and suddenly it's like, oh, I can write my songs, I can show people, and other people can, they're helping me edit it, they're helping us move it forward. We're all on the same page here. I can give it to a singer, she's going to have a producer produce it, she's going to feature it. It's going to be like the whole track is coming to fruition. And I
Mhm.
think that was my first time of then seeing that fully come to fruition. And that was like in, I went there in 2013. I was there for 3 years until 2016. And I released my first music in 2016. I moved to New York and started releasing my own songs. And I think around then was like, okay, I'm going to be the artist and I'm going to do this.
Was it the same sort of thing I've heard Neil Diamond say? Like, I wrote songs, people weren't singing them the way that I wanted them to be. Like, it was that sort of thing. Like, I'm writing these songs for people, but it's not turning out the way that I wanted it to turn out.
Completely. I thought like I'm gonna put out music and everybody's gonna think it's so good and it's gonna be great. And I would like put all my last like the any money I had, any energy I had, anything into like each song, getting it produced, release it, and then it would just kind of like sit there and fall flat.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, what's going on? And then do it again and again. And it's actually interesting now, like even looking back, there's certain music that I might look back on and be like, oh yeah, I was still learning in my songwriting and developing. And while I do think that I have developed and improved in certain ways, a lot of it I look back on and I'm like, oh no, this is really well done and this is great and it still will take off. Like it's just like hasn't been the right timing yet, or you just have to keep doing the same thing. Um, but I think I was always confused, like, how come I think this is so good, and the people I do show it to think it's really good, but it's just like, what? Why is nothing happening?
Yeah. And of course, like everybody knows, Berkeley's big. Were you a good
Yeah,
were you a good student?
I was like, so I was homeschooled my whole life, and that was my
No
first
shit.
time
Wow.
going to like a school. So I think I was like the teacher's pet for the first like year and a half. I was like, I get grades, I can do this, I get to go to a class like in the movies. This is so cool.
Yeah.
And then in 2015, over that summer, I'd gone to New York to do internships. And I ended up kind of staying, was like, okay, I got to get life ready for like as soon as I graduate, because I have no idea how I'm going to like, I'll have one year of a visa to like legally stay and work in the country. So I need to like get things happening. And in New York, I felt like more connected. I had found different people to like work with or do internships at, or just was like meeting a lot of people. So my last year of college, I put like all my classes onto 2 days a week. It was actually like mostly staying on friends' couches in New York. Would go to Boston, like I would take the bus there, do 2 full days of classes, and then bus back to New
Wow.
York, be there the rest of the time. Yeah, I got very little sleep.
So music's always been in your life, like in the house. Were your parents playing a ton of music and stuff as a kid?
I think, they say like there's like idea of like parents projecting their uncompleted dreams onto their children.
Sure.
I think my mom did that, where I think she always wanted to be a musician and never had the opportunity. So like I have six, like I'm from a family of six siblings. So 8 of us total. And my mom had all of us in music lessons, which now looking back is crazy because like we grew up on a farm. Money was always tight. We were always like, she was always like, this is our
Well,
limited
that's why money
budget for
was tight.
groceries.
That's why it was tight.
Yeah, that's why it was, right? No, like I remember her always being like waiting on like the government subsidy checks that you have when you have kids and like that would help us like cover basic costs. But now looking back, I'm like, oh, that is crazy that like yeah, we never got like additional things growing up, or like had the like food was like basic things that you would buy every week and that's it. Like we live off this stuff only.
Yeah,
And that somehow she was like, but music, I'm gonna put them all through music. So
it's incredible. So everybody was homeschooled too.
yeah, yeah,
We tossed around the because I have two kids. I have two boys, grade 9 and grade 7 now. But we tossed around
oh
the idea of homeschooling and
yeah.
talked ourselves out of it when we started.
Why did you talk yourselves out of it?
Well, I think it just was like, do we have the time and the patience? I think more than anything to like
Yeah,
make sure that our kids grew up with an education. Like I still have a
yeah,
job. I have to go work. So I'm going
yeah,
to leave my wife with my kids for 8 straight hours, and hopefully she
yeah,
does the, you know what I mean? I think we just talked
yeah.
ourselves out of it. We're like, it
So you're
seems
like,
like a fucking massive task.
I think it can be done well, but I think it really depends also on where you live. Like if you're in more farming communities, I think it does make sense there because a lot of times you do school in the morning, you learn everything you would need to learn from a full day at an actual school because you're able to learn it so quickly.
Yeah.
and then you're the rest of the afternoon doing kid things or helping out with farm work or stuff like that. Like, kind of does make sense. But then
Yeah.
there's also that like lack of, and I know a lot of people say like, oh, you can like go do sports and other things with like kids and socialize that way. But there is this lack of like learning how to like go through conflict with kids that aren't your siblings and how to like navigate the world in ways that you're gonna have to learn to later on that you
Right.
kind of I think learn in a school environment. I don't know. So it's a
Yeah.
yeah,
Interesting though. Yeah, I don't meet many people that have been homeschooled. Did you like
me
it?
neither.
Did I? Yeah, me neither. Did you like it?
Especially like as soon as people, when you're like, I'm homeschooled, everybody's like growing up, they'd be like, oh, but like you're not socially awkward. Like there's just always that thing that like somebody's
Yeah,
really socially awkward. But
yeah.
then in college, whenever I told people like, oh, I was homeschooled, they'd be like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. I'd always be like,
What does
what
that
does
mean?
that
What does
mean?
that mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. What was your first concert you went to?
Probably like a piano recital or something, or like classical musicians. It was always just classical musicians coming through our town.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't really remember. I don't remember at all, actually.
Hmm. Uh, and then so your album's called The Roaring Twenties,
hmm
and it's not out till March. Like, is that
Not
weird?
until March.
Is that weird? Like, because like talking like half a year from now, and how long's it been completed? It must be weird to have like
It's so weird. I always joke that I feel like I'm like, when you're releasing stuff, it's releasing in the past because, like,
totally.
by the time you've written it and you've been obsessed with it, you're like, this is such a good idea. And then it actually gets out is like a whole other thing.
Yeah.
These songs, I started writing them actually like in 2021.
Oh,
I was still releasing my last album and had those songs all kind of coming out. Started writing these, and then I think started recording them in 2022 and kind of working like virtually with my producer and then like going to his studio a bit. He had just moved to France, so like going there a bit to record some of them. And then early 2023, so early last year, went and like finished recording all the vocals, writing everything like that. And then as soon as I did that, I was like, I'm so burnt out. I don't even want to look at this project. I don't want to touch it. I don't even know if it's good. Like, I'm done. I was just like, I'm done with music for a minute. And like I'm just gonna do some more behind the scenes stuff. I was working with a bunch of other artists, like helping them with songwriting, artist development, all of that. But I just felt like I can't. I feel like so much of like the indie artist thing is you're just putting stuff out, and just like hoping that one day you'll get a break. And it can be like the burnout is so real of like
sure.
I don't know what to do, right? So rather, I was gonna like release it last year, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna like give it a minute, and that felt great to do because then I finally came back to it this year, started the whole like mixing and mastering process, and that was great because I could like hear it with fresh ears. Everything felt better. We were able to make any production changes I wanted. Um, and then I feel like this release has felt like way more sustainable. I'm still doing it all on my own, having to plan all that stuff. Um, but it doesn't just feel like I'm like throwing stuff out in the wind and like, okay, it's out there and I'm too tired to do anything. It's like, okay, I'm putting it out and like I can
Yeah.
like get back that excitement about it and like show people how it feels to me and everything like that. But it is weird. It is like, yeah, weird to have it all and have to be like, y'all can't hear it for another six
Yeah.
months.
Well, the beauty though, of course, Elena, is that as old as it is for you, it's new to all of us.
Yeah,
Like it's going to be brand new to everybody that tastes it, right? That's the
yeah,
beauty of it. But it's
yeah.
yeah, it's weird. It's weird. Like I've talked to some artists that have said like they're literally sit on an album for almost a year before they release.
hmm
Like what?
hmm
Just seems
But
so
it's like
ridiculous.
I remember hearing interviews from and even just artists saying like I'd shown a song to like label people and nobody believed in it, and that was like 10 years earlier, right? Or like
Yeah.
I think that happens so much more than we realize that like there's something that's been created and it takes so long before it's finally released or comes out. Um,
Oh, but it's so
yeah.
good when it finally comes out, though.
Yeah, yeah. Then it feels good. You're like, now I can show you all what I've been talking about.
Nice, nice. All right, let's get outside of music for a second, kind of get to know you a little bit.
Okay.
Sports person? Who's your team? No.
No sports, no nothing.
Yeah.
I am the worst. I'm like the person who goes to a thing, to a like a sports event, and I'm asking like
Go team.
questions that yeah, literally, I'm like asking questions that everybody's just like looking at me like, you don't know the basic rules about how this works. Mm-mm.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough. What are you watching? Like, what are you binging if you find time?
I'm also really bad at watching movies and TV, and
Really? It's all music?
think yeah, when I like start watching things, I'll get very drawn into that world or like what's going on, and like I feel like my imagination is just always going, and
Mm.
if I like feed it too many movies or something, it like lives in that world. And also I need to know the ending. Like I'll be like, if I'm the kind of person that if I start watching something, I have to see the whole thing immediately. Like,
You,
let me see
like
this.
you're asking questions and like,
Mm-hmm.
give me that. And like,
Wikipediaing the
yeah.
ending. um, but that being said, I think like movies can also be so impactful in. I can also watch something and then get so drawn in and create from that. I feel like the same way though with I went to a concert the other night and I thought like I need to go see live music because I don't actually go to a lot of live music events.
Mm.
And halfway through the concert, I was like, "Oh right, this is why I don't go because like it's great." And now I'm inspired halfway through, so I'm like, "Cool, I want to go home and work on my own thing." Like now I'm inspired. Let's go do something. And I
That's
think
awesome.
that happens like with movies and things too. That I'll start watching something, either get bored of it or be like, "Okay, cool, now I'm inspired." Go create something and then
Yeah.
forget that I was ever watching a movie in the first place.
Yeah. 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 What is that? What are those things that you get pulled into, like go down the rabbit hole? Like for me, it's aliens and like the pyramids and shit. If I see one of those on like Facebook or whatever in the videos, I'm
You're
like,
like, oh,
fuck, here we go.
I feel
Um,
like that. I feel like actually documentaries, I feel like I always have those going on.
yeah.
Um, I do like things that cause me to like reconsider life or like pull me out of my perspective of life. And maybe things like that do it. Or even like, not so much like conspiracy videos, but more just like, yeah, when people talking about like a history or this idea that like maybe humanity, maybe life isn't quite what we think it is. And I think that always is like a, regardless of if I believe in what they're saying or not, just like interesting to be like, ooh, let's just think from that perspective. And that's kind of like interesting of like,
I know, right?
yeah.
I had a
And so,
conversation with, do you know Chantal Kreviasik?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So she was on maybe last year or the year before, and she brought it because I was like, I asked her pretty much the same thing, like, "Hey, do you believe aliens have visited Earth?" And she went on a freaking tirade about how life's a simulation and like we're just like puppets to the whoever is pulling the strings. And I was like, "What?"
Yeah. It's funny though because like we talk about like oh aliens or like other forms of life or stuff like that as if that's this whole like oh my gosh this mysterious thing could it be true. And I think that's always kind of been like maybe interesting this whole like mysterious what could it be, but then also there's a whole component of understanding all the things that are like right in front of our eyes in terms of like I think growing up, because I grew up, like, my family was quite off grid in a way. Like, we grew up in the wilderness and all of that. And they would always be like, the government's poisoning this food. They're putting this in this. They're putting this in this. And that's like a very common mentality where I grew up. Or like, fast food is this. You don't believe this. This is this marketing. This is this, right? Don't buy into any of that. It's all these like
Smart.
corporations trying to get you to like believe something. But I think something that has more become more prominent to me recently has been like rather than like even like beauty companies are putting this much in their products and like convincing women this and this and this, realizing like our internal programming that's gone on, which once again is part of all of that as well, but like how first of all we have the power to like we might not have the power to like not have certain things be put in our food or like be sold to us at supermarkets, but we have the power to like change our own um, mind and like consciousness around all of this stuff. And I think there's like a lot of focus around like mysterious things the government's doing and happening outside of us. But like the things that are really prominent right in front of us, nobody really wants to like address that.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. So true.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm going to respect your time here. I'll ask you two more questions and we'll wrap it up.
Okay.
Worst job you've had?
Oh my goodness. There are a lot of ones that could be. Okay, so it's gonna be a tie between growing up because I grew up on a farm. Whenever I'd get grounded, which was often because my mom and I always fought,
Yeah.
my uncle ran a meat wrapping plant, like a butcher facility and like a meat wrapping plant. So I would just get dropped off there and have to work with him for the day. And I don't know if you've ever smelled inside a meat packing faculty. And like, even if it's clean and sterilized, it's just raw meat and it's just disgusting and just like,
Yeah.
there's no such thing as cute outfits or dressing up. Like, you are in all white, everything's pinned back, and you're just around this raw meat in this cold place all day, cutting and wrapping meat. So that
And
ties.
you're not a vegetarian. Like that's even worse at that point, right? Like,
I mean, I think that made me like like I don't drink milk because I had to milk cows growing up, and I'm like, I don't think anyone who would milk a cow. I mean, obviously people do, but I don't think the majority of people, if they had to milk a cow, would be like, I'm gonna put this in my mouth now, like.
yeah, yeah,
And so, same with meat too. I think like after a while of like touching it all day, you're like, I don't really want to eat this.
yeah.
So I'd say it's a tie of that one, and then so many jobs that I would work, even in New York, just like customer service jobs where you're just like
Dealing
intended
with
to.
people, like people are stupid.
And I just realized like, oh, there's so many people who just take out. They have whatever boss treating them a certain way, so then they need to find somebody they perceive lesser than them to take out their issues on. I just like always remember thinking like these people are just like coming like using customer therapy or customer service people as therapy. Like they're like it might be a nice way, it might be a bad way, but they just think like you're like
Yeah,
I'm being paid to be here, and they think you're their bestie, or they project all their issues onto you.
it's so bad. I hate working with people. I hate it. So it is the worst. Oh my god. Okay.
Yeah.
Uh, and I want you to tell us a near death story where you're like, holy shit, I could have just died.
I had one. Like this is kind of recent. Um, I feel like multiple two that stick out in my head right now was once when I moved to New York. I'm staying on a friend's couch. Went on this date with a guy that I was like, oh, this will be cool. I'll like try to meet people and like I don't know, yeah, just meet. I knew nobody in New York. And so this guy was like, cool, I'll pick you up on my motorcycle. And I was like, cool. And then he was like, there's like this cool bar in Bushwick we can go to. And I was like up in Manhattan in like the middle of New York. And at one point, we're riding over the Brooklyn Bridge. And it's so iconic. I'm on the back of this guy's motorcycle. And I just think, wait, this is so cool. Like, looks exactly like from the movies and is so cool. But also, I have no idea where this guy's taking me. I have no idea who this guy is. Nobody in my life has any idea where I am. And he like took me way out in Bushwick, and there's like all these warehouses around, and I was like,
Oh shit.
like, hmm. And then we went, and it was like some like gentrified bar where everybody drank out of like mason jars and it was fine.
Yeah.
But I was like, okay. Um, and then
Like you were
uh,
legitimately scared on the bike.
I I wasn't. I feel like in near death experiences, I haven't gotten like really scared. Because if I was scared, I want to get in that in the first place.
Right.
Recently, I had an experience where in London, there's a lot of like knives. People don't have guns generally here, so there's always
Yeah.
like stabbing incidences. And I was like walking home, and I would say London's like quite. I feel very very safe here. I was walking home though. It's probably like earlier this year, and it's like at 2 a.m. or so, and very close to my place. And this girl was walking in the direction from me. Clearly, we had been out partying or something. And there was, as I walked by, I was like texting my friend, and then suddenly I realized that like the guy talking to her that he like she kept being like, I have a boyfriend, sorry, I have a boyfriend, no. And suddenly I was like, oh, this is an odd situation. Like this is like 2 a.m. This seems a
Yeah.
little bit odd. So I just turned around and I was like, hey, do either of you guys know where this place is? Like pretend to be lost. And she goes like, yeah, I got you. I can show you. And like quickly puts her arm in mine and is like, I'm going there. I'll take you with me, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy that I'm gonna assume he was on drugs or something was going on. Like, he followed after us and he somehow seemed to think that I'd like stolen this girl from it. Like he was like, oh, you think whatever. He was going on and on. And then like we walk up to this bus stop and we're waiting for this bus and he walked up and he's like, yeah, this is how people like you get stabbed. Like this is, and I was like, I think this guy's actually gonna pull a knife on me right now. Like I've never thought that at all here.
Yeah.
But like this whole incident played out is probably about like 5 to 10 minutes. And I was like, I am prepared to get a knife in me right now.
Oh my
And then
God.
it didn't happen. But like, but I don't think I was like in those moments. You're just kind of like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
guess you're gonna be the one cutting and wrapping me. No, this is, like I've seen it all. It happens the same way it happens to cows. No, but yeah, I feel like those weren't like that would be like near death. But I feel
But
I
there,
don't
yeah,
know. Do
there's
you think?
potential for sure.
Do you think people though like when they're near death feel that fear or like in other times?
I think it kind of depends on what it is. Like I've had some people answer saying, like really, really, really horrendous car accidents where time slows and you
Mm,
tell like, you get out, you're like, fuck, how did I live? Like, look at the cars mangled. That
yeah.
sort of thing. Like I think that some
Right.
people feel it, but I think that, yeah, I
Yeah.
think like it's the post where you're like, yeah, if that had happened or that had happened, like, yeah, I'd be dead,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is interesting. Like, I guess with a lot of like, whether it's like near death things or something, people can, when they describe, like, wait a minute, logically, none of that should have worked out. This doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I feel that now, looking back on things in my life, not necessarily near death things, but just how things worked out, that I'm like, maybe trying to explain to somebody how a certain like chain of incidents happened or oh yeah, here's how I survived in this situation, or here's how I managed to get this thing, or make this opportunity work. And then when I'm looking back, I'm like, that shouldn't have happened. I don't know how any of that worked out.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
Elena, what's the plan for you for the rest of the day?
Oh my goodness,
What,
I'm like, I
what
think
time
my
is it
body's
there? It's
getting.
like, is it like
It's
5?
it's only it's 4,
4.
but I've been so tired today. And I'm getting ready to go. I feel like my body knows I'm heading back to New York, which is 5 hours behind. So it's getting ready to go back into that time zone. So I couldn't get to sleep last night. And then today I've just been like a mix of doing music stuff, having some calls, packing. It's actually sunny out here. So I'm like, I should get outside. So a whole little mix of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah.
Where are you most active online? Where should people follow you?
On Instagram at Elena Erin Official. Both start with an E. And I'm most active there.
Beauty. Roaring Twenties is out 5 months from now.
But I just released a single, and we've got another single coming on November 8th.
Okay, great.
So
Well,
songs
we'll
songs are
have
gonna
this
come
out
out.
right around that time that the new single comes out. So
Perfect. So you can send
perfect
people
timing
over
for
for
that.
that.
Okay.
Amazing.
Well, have a great rest of the day, and thanks for doing this. We'll see you online.